This is my 2016 Mazda 3, and she needs some new brakes. So I'm aiming to change my front brakes. I don't have a lot of experience. I have done the back brakes once, so essentially I'm an expert. If this is your first time doing brakes and you're watching this video, please do more research. I don't fucking know what I'm doing. I think I do. I hope I do. But yeah, don't just watch this video. Watch as many videos as you can. Do as much research as you can. Brakes are serious stuff. You don't want to put yourself or anyone else in danger. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. Today, the parts you're going to need: brake pads and rotors. It's good to inspect these, open up the boxes before you disassemble your car and just make sure everything's looking right, things aren't broken, and you're just making sure nothing looks out of place or wonky. Another good thing to have on hand are these slider pin boot kits. Sometimes you'll get to a point where you're taking your brakes apart and you'll see that the existing boots are worn or torn, which they need to be replaced. So these are good to have on hand. They're also inexpensive. I also like to dive a little deeper into the brake pads. So first thing I'll do is take a look at the brake pads. Sometimes the inside and outside brake pads are different. In this case, for the front, looks like they are all identical. I also like to take a look at the little brackets that come. These come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes these are kind of combined, so one bracket per side. In this case, they're all separated, so it'll be 4 brackets per side. I like to organize these per side. They also come with these wear indicator little thingies, or I just call them squealers. Sometimes they're actually built into the pad, which would go on the inside. In this case, you got to attach them, which I'll show you later. A fun thing I learned is these brake pads, or I'm sure many brake pads, do not come with installation instructions. So, getting your head wrapped around all these little parts and clips can be a little intimidating. That's where research and disassembling in an organized manner is very beneficial. We also have a little grease packet. In regards to rotors, when should you actually replace your rotors? Do you need to replace them every time you change your brake pads? The answer to that is it depends. You'll need to inspect your old rotors and see how they're doing. There are spec'd minimum thicknesses. I don't know that offhand, but these are a giant hunk of steel. So they do tend to last a while, but existing rotors, they can get pits and gouges. If you run your fingernail across and see there's a lot of gouges, that's a good indication. Maybe you should change them. Also, they do wear down, and then you'll get like a little buildup of material on the inside and outside, and that can start rubbing. These things also get warped, which will cause rubbing as you're driving. So in my opinion, I think changing the rotors every time you change your brake pads is not 100% necessary, but it's a good practice. Even if you change your pads, you may have rubbing or some vibration just because of the old rotors. So I'll leave that up to you, but use your discretion, do your own research. When should you replace your brake pads? Well, they say when the pad thickness reaches around 3 to 4 millimeters. I think that's a little excessive. These come out of the box with about 8 or 9. So they're saying when it's about half, you should replace. I don't know if that's necessary. I think you should start keeping an eye on it when it's 4 or 3 mils. Just doing some early morning editing here. Looking at the repair manual, it actually states minimum thickness is 2 millimeters. The 3 to 4 millimeters I saw on the internet, I think that's more of a keep an eye on it depth. So minimum 2, I think that's fair. There are little wear indicator clips. Sometimes they're built in, as I mentioned. Sometimes they're separate. That's a pretty good indication. If that starts squealing against your rotor, yeah, you should replace it. Again, I'll leave it up to you to use your discretion. They recommend 3 to 4 mils. My philosophy is if there's meat on the pad, it's probably still good, but Brakes are very serious, they're very important, so just be careful. Keep an eye on things. Check every time you rotate your tires or change out your tires for winter or summer or doing anything. Just take a look and just be on top of it. We'll start off with the set of tools you need for taking off your tires. You're gonna need a breaker bar, 21mm socket, large torque wrench, your jack, and your jack stands. Now to actually change your brakes, these are the tools you're going to need. We'll start off with 17 and a 14mm socket and a ratchet. I have a long-handled ratchet. This is very helpful because for the bolts on the bracket, you just need a little extra oomph. If you only have a normal ratchet, you can put a pipe on the end. They also have these extension tools that fit on the end there. It's not 100% necessary, but it will make your life a little bit easier. We have a torque wrench, 3/8, hardware tray. Now a job like this, not a lot of bolts, but a larger job, things can get pretty chaotic and you wanna stay organized. We also got a hammer, we got some picks, a clamp for compressing the caliper piston. We also have a variety of different types of wire brushes and or wire wheels. You'll also need a bungee cord or wire, that's just to hang up the caliper. And optional but not necessary is a drill. Some additional supplies you'll probably need. We'll start with some anti-seize, some lubricant. The pads, as I mentioned, do come with a little packet, but it's not a lot, so it's good to have this. Now this is rated for brakes, silicone ceramic brake lubricant. It's important that you use the right stuff. A, because there's a lot of heat that's generated in brakes. Also, you're going to be greasing up some fittings that are going to be in contact with rubber or the boots. You don't want a grease that's going to deteriorate that rubber. Another thing I may or may not use, and I'll get into it a little bit later, is blue thread locker, some penetrating oil, and some brake cleaner. So before you jack up your car, it's best to break the lug nuts loose while the wheels are still on the ground. So the car is jacked up from the front center point. That way I can rotate or turn my tires either direction, make the brake calipers more accessible. And also it allows me to install my jack stands under the rail. Now there's a lot of components and parts under here, but just take a look. Start becoming more and more familiar with your vehicle, and these things will slowly come to you as you start watching more videos and doing more research. Things will just start making sense. But for brakes, let's talk about the parts of the brakes that we'll be dealing with. Here we have the caliper. This is what contains the piston, which compresses the pads. These little guys with the boots, these are the sliding pins. This actually allows the caliper to kind of move back and forth. If this was rigid and the piston shot out, you would only get contact on one side of the rotor. But this allows it to grab or at least compress on the outside too. So yeah, this needs to move back and forth. What this is attached to is the mounting support or mounting bracket. We have our brake line, of course, and then a little bleeder valve. So to take this apart, we just need, I believe, two 14mm bolts for the caliper slider pins. And then harder to see is a 17mm bolt here to take the bracket off. Let's spray them up with some penetrating oil just to make our life a little easier. I've also rotated the wheel out just so I can access a lot better. If you're having trouble getting the socket on, you can just give it a couple whacks with a hammer. Just get it on. You want it seated properly or else it'll round off the nut and you'll have bigger problems. So we'll get that off after. When you get this bolt off, if you just want to inspect your brake pads, this will actually slide up. And that'll give you a much better view of your brake pad material. Before we take off the second bolt here, you want to be prepared to hang up the caliper with the bungee cord or wire. I'm not sure if this bungee cord will work. If not, I'll tie it up. and keep your hardware organized. The reason why you don't want to just leave your caliper anywhere is because you can damage the brake line. Okay, cool. This is an adjustable bungee cord, which is actually very helpful. I bought it specifically for this task. Okie doke, just make sure that's locked in there. It should be good to take this bracket off. So in addition to pounding on the sockets, you can also give it a brush down with a wire brush or scrape with a flathead screwdriver, whatever works. To be honest, I did have a bitch getting that socket out of that bolt there. I had to put it in my vise and whack it with a hammer back and forth. There we go. There we go. Hey, stay on there, buddy. So I got the one bolt off. I'm just looking at it. It does look like there's actually some red thread locker. The repair manual doesn't state to apply any thread locker, but I mean, these are pretty important bolts, and they're pretty thick, so you don't have as big of a risk of snapping them. That's my biggest fear. But I think I'll probably put some blue thread locker on there just to be safe. So I said in one of my other videos, a good lesson is just keep fucking with it. So this socket's stuck on there. So you can take different approaches. Whacking them with a hammer, put it in the vise. I sprayed some penetrating oil in there. It will come out eventually. You just gotta keep working at it. So with the bracket or support mount or whatever it's called off, I know it's tempting to start taking things out, but I like to keep it all assembled, bring it down to my workbench and just kind of compare all the clips and pads and make sure that I'm putting everything back in the right orientation. Another thing you can do is do what I'm doing, film it or take pictures, just because it sucks when you get to a point where you're like, oh shit, does it go this way or this way? And as I mentioned, brakes, they're serious stuff. All right, before I head down to my workbench, we got to take this rotor off. So this one's actually surprisingly loose. So I'm just pulling off. If it doesn't come off, you can just whack it with a hammer. If you're replacing these, it's not a big deal. I mean, you can put a little force into it. But if you're keeping them and you just want to kind of clean them off or inspect them, dead blow hammer is a pretty good option. It tends not to dent things or damage things too badly. Yeah, look at these rotors. They're rusting away. I mean, where the pad hits, it's still got some decent material, but you know, you can see all this rust and shit just chipping away. All right, we got the mounting brackets and assembly inside. So this is the outside, this is the inside. It will sit like that on the wheel. Orientation is important because now I want to start understanding and organizing my different types of brackets. But let's take a look at these pads. Actually, they should just slide right out. Okay, so I do have quite a bit of meat on here. Shit, so I got like 5 mils. The inside pad has a little bit less. It's around 4 to 3. So there is a little bit of uneven wear. I'm gonna grease up the pin, so that should solve that issue, I hope. And I think I'm gonna still proceed with changing my brakes. I mean, I've come this far. It's, you know, they are the front brakes, which are probably the more important. So taking a look at these little, I guess they're more of anti-rattle clips, unless this got bent in. I don't know if these are actually meant to squeal, but they are on, I guess, the right side. If it was a squealer, which I'm not for sure if it is or isn't, but these typically go on the side that the rotation will hit first of the rotor. Again, if this is sitting in the car, the rotor is moving in that counterclockwise direction, so it will hit this end first, and then it'll go and hit that second. So these appear to be in the right location. Now, just because a mechanic or a shop put something on doesn't mean they did it correctly. So do your own research and just take a second look. It does definitely complicate things. If something, like if this was on the other side, I would start doubting myself, but that's what research is for. Okay, so these little brackets, so let's see here. So that looks like the left. I'm gonna try and organize these just so I don't get lost. And obviously I have the video. So let's just get a shot of that, just so if I get confused, I can look back. When I was doing some research, the way that made sense to me is these kind of springies. You should be able to install the pad from the outside and slide it in towards the rotor. If these were on the opposite way, you would not be able to do that. I've organized these clips in a way that makes sense to me. Outside, inside. Let's clean up this bracket. Okay, just want to get this nice and cleaned up, get up all this loose shit, all the corrosion. It's going to help the brackets seat a lot nicer, and it'll eliminate your pads from binding. You don't want them binding, you want them sliding like the slider pins, right? They kind of move in and out. If they bind, there'll always be too much pressure on your rotor and you'll wear out your brakes and rubbing and a bunch of bad stuff. So whether you're brushing it down with just a wire brush or a drill, it doesn't matter. You're throwing up a lot of rusty ass brake dust. That's probably really, really bad for you. Especially doing this indoors. Make sure you're wearing a mask. Just take care of yourself, guys. Like this stuff is no joke. It can cause some real harm in the long term. Ooh la la, baby. Look how shiny. It's not actually that shiny. I gave it a kind of a rough brush. If I wasn't so lazy, I would probably take off all the corrosion, get some caliper rated paint and paint these bad boys up. But I am lazy, so we're gonna stick with the pads. Let's take a look at these slider pins. It's good to pull them out, inspect, and re-grease. So I don't see any obvious issues with them other than they need to be cleaned. So let's clean them up and then put some more grease in there. Take a look at that little collar. I bought an extra one, but this one seems to be in pretty good, decent shape. So I'll be reusing all these, I think. Just cleaning out all the crud. That's where the picks can come in handy here. I was using some brake cleaner to kind of clean that up. Watch that around the rubber. I'm pretty sure it will deteriorate the rubber. Same thing here. I was going to use some brake clean, but this plastic collar, that will probably deteriorate if brake cleaner gets on it. So just be careful when you're using chemicals around different pieces and materials. Okay, so that's cleaned up. One thing, very important. One of these slider pins has a plastic collar, one of them doesn't. I don't know which one, if it's consistent, I don't know. But put the same one back. Don't take them both out at the same time and mix them up. So just one at a time. I don't know how important it is to mix those up, but it's probably not great. They're there for a reason. The reason being, who fucking knows? But yeah, just keep track of what you're doing. Put things back where you took them out from. Stay organized, my friends. Just got rid of the loose rust. I also inspected the boot for any wear and tear, any holes, any cracking, anything like that. Let's lube this baby up. So you don't need too much lube. Oh, my fingers are so fucking dirty. Look at that. All right, I'm gonna go put on some gloves. All right, we got some gloves. You're just rubbing it in a little bit. Just a nice coating all along. You don't want a big glob at the end here because this is very tight. It fits in very tight. So if you put too much grease, it won't want to compress. Slide her back in. Make sure the boot is seated properly and that we have movement. When cleaning the surfaces of the boot, you want to try not to get shit in there because the more shit in there, the more likely the slider pins will not slide. So just be careful. If you are nervous, just replace them. That is if you got a replacement. But what did I tell you? What did I tell you guys? It's good to be prepared. All right, so we got the brackets in, I believe in the correct orientation. They're super easy, they just snap in. As long as you've cleaned these well, they'll just fit right in. For the anti-rattle clips or wear indicator clips, I'm not actually sure. As I mentioned, they will be going on the right side and then the left side on the inner. Before we put these in, I keep touching the surface of this. You really shouldn't. You want to keep this as clean as possible. You don't want grease on there because grease is friction's worst enemy. Sorry, back to installing these. You will want to grease up the little ears on both sides of both pads. And then you'll also want to grease the back of the pad or the shim where the caliper will touch. So on the outside, it'll be the bracket where it's touching there. And then on the inside, it's gonna be roughly where the piston is gonna press. The reason being is, you know, these things are in constant contact. There's gonna be a lot of vibration. So where there's points of contact, you just want some lubricant to minimize noise and whatnot. All right, before we put the rotor on, we wanna make sure we clean the hub. Sorry about the noise, my neighbor's mowing his grass. You know what? I'm gonna tell him to stop. Nah, just kidding. Do you imagine? Imagine the entitlement you would have. Excuse me, sir, I'm trying to film a YouTube video. But anyways, yeah, let's get this cleaned up. Now, the reason being is A, it will prevent future seizing. I'm also gonna put some anti-seize in here. B, it just really levels off the surface. You know, the tiniest little thing can cause a little wobble in your rotor, and that will lead to rubbing. There are attachments you can get for your drill that actually fit right over top of the lug nuts. I don't have one, so I'll just have to make do. Now you want to put a nice coating. Oh, this is brand new. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. As I was saying, you want to put a nice coating of anti-seize on this. Another thing I like to do when I have things exposed and opened up is just get a coat of the undercoating on. I use Surface Shield, but you can use whatever. What you always want to do with new rotors is spray them down with brake clean. A lot of times the factory will ship with a thin layer of oil just to stop corrosion and whatnot. As I mentioned, oil and grease is friction's worst enemy, and in the case with brakes, we want friction. After you're done, you want to try avoiding touching it with your hands because your hands have oils and then grease from your car. Sometimes your cars will have these little screws that hold the rotor to the hub, so you need to make sure you line it up. For Mazda 3s, for whatever reason, they don't have. Another thing you can do is pop on a lug nut just to hold it in place. Let's get this bracket on. I have cleaned the bolts with the wire brush a little bit. And as I mentioned, I will be applying a little bit of thread locker. Torque spec is 68 to 81, so I did somewhere in the middle around 76. Now with the Loctite, we should be pretty good regardless. Just double check. Frig. Now that the rotor and bracket is on, you just want to check the brackets, make sure that they're not touching or will rub the rotor, so we're good there. I'm gonna clean up this piston boot and piston a little bit, just get all the crud out of there, and then we're gonna compress it. There's different types of tools. You can buy the specialty tools. I mean, I don't think it's necessary, at least for the front brakes. The rear brakes are a different story. I think it's because of the emergency brake, but you essentially have to compress and twist at the same time. It's very frustrating. I did it with a clamp and a pair of needle nose pliers, but that's a different story. So the best way to do this is just take an old brake pad and then get your clamp in there. You want to try and do it evenly because I think you can damage the piston. The thing I heard you can do, or should, is pop the cap of the brake fluid reservoir. I haven't done that. Also, I've heard that you actually should undo this release valve because it can, in a rare occasion, damage something up in there. You can see that it is compressing. Just, you want to go nice and slow. Okay, so we're gonna grease up the little ears here and then try and get this in as smoothly as possible. The inside is always the hardest one. This took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out, but just kept at it. There we go. So I leaned it in, snapped it in. So I'm gonna have to give the rotor a brush or a spray down and a wipe because I'm pretty sure I got grease all over there. I hope I didn't get on the surface of the pad, but you know, that's why you got to take it for a test drive and just be careful, and you know, it should wear off, I hope. Okay, so I'll try the same technique. Start with the bottom and press down. Oh, that was so easy. I'm like a fucking pro. Okay, let's get the caliper on. Oh, oops, I gotta grease it. Oh, almost forgot. Gotta grease the faces of the pads. But I was just doing that just so I know, you know, so I know where it hits. I didn't forget. I would never. So I've greased up the face of the pads. Let's get the caliper on for real this time. Just remember to remove that bungee cord. You don't want to be driving around with that thing dangling. Okay, so I'm not sure if you see that. It's spinning, so let me go grab a wrench. We got a wrench on, it's a 17 mil. So this torque is 20 to 22 foot-pounds. It's very light. Yeah, come on, baby. Okay, don't forget to take off the nut you put on, or you won't be able to get the wheel on and you'll be confused. So that's it. That's how you change your brakes. I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. And it's getting hot and I'm tired. I'm gonna break for lunch. Those stupid pads, man. I spent so much time trying to get those pads in. Obviously you can't see because it's sped up, but it was brutal. And that's how you do it, kids. That's how you change your front brakes, or at least that's how I think you change your front brakes. You do want to take your car for a test drive. I just did. Everything feels fine. The first time you step on the pedal, it will go down a lot further, but that's because you compress the piston, so it just needs to travel out a little farther. But just, you know, pump the brakes a couple times and then take it for a controlled test drive. Do some heavy stopping and see how it feels. Hopefully everything worked out for you like it did for me. This video, I have no idea how long it's going to be, but it's probably pretty long. I like to do long form content. Sometimes when I'm watching other people's videos, I still have questions. How did they do that? Or they skipped over that? So I make it as detailed as I can. Sometimes I think maybe I should just get to the fucking point, but I don't wanna, so I'm not gonna. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some value out of it, and all the best.